Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on asphalt pavement remediation. Oops. My name is Melissa. I've been with Kipcon for about 15 years. I do quite a bit of work with uh, drainage, asphalt pavement, concrete, anything site work related. I do specs, multiple specs every year on each of those types of components. Today, we're going to be focusing on asphalt pavement. So we're going to be talking about what asphalt pavement is and how we as an engineering firm, go about evaluating and preparing specs. We'll talk a little bit about project timing, about what the project entails and what it might entail, what it definitely entails and what it might entail, depending upon how the project goes. So what is asphalt pavement first? I want to be clear that this webinar is focusing specifically on bituminous asphalt pavement. There are different types of pavement. There are concrete pavements. There are even porous asphalt pavements. Today we're going to be talking about impervious asphalt pavement. So they differ a bit from the porous pavements, which actually allow water to filter through. This type of pavement that we're talking about today is flexible asphalt. It is impervious. It's constructed in several layers. So when the community is new or when you're putting down a new roadway, no matter where it is, when you're constructing an impervious asphalt, you put down first a subbase where lays on top of the native soil. It's usually an aggregate course, meaning that it's made up of loose stone or stone that can be compacted. Many times in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, that subbase course is what's called a dense graded aggregate, a DGA, or in Pennsylvania, it's called a 2A, and sometimes it's called a QP, and it's got all kinds of different names. But the important thing to remember is that it is an aggregate course and it's compactable so that it becomes almost waterproof and it's very, very stable. And then the next course up that we would lay down on top of a subbase is the base course. This is an asphalt course, and just as the surface course is. The difference between surface course, often called wearing course, and a base course is generally the size of the aggregate. A base course is generally thicker, so it can handle a thicker aggregate. It's meant to be a thick structural layer on top of your aggregate structural layer. The wearing course is just what it sounds like. It is the course that top course, often it's called as well. It's meant to take a beating, and it's what ends up looking really, really bad right before you do a pavement project. So we'll talk a little bit about maintenance in the end. And even though there are many projects I do in the course of a year where the surface course looks terrible, and I think when we mill that off, that base course is going to look terrible. And when we mill off that wearing course, the base course looks fine because the surface course has taken all that beating and the community has been good to maintain that so that the surface course, it was limited to that surface course. So how do you know it's time to do a project? So even though you have a reserve study, hopefully that you have in place that you're updating every couple of years to keep it current and make sure that you have enough funds in reserve for the various projects you need to do. Um, you want to have an evaluation. Just because your reserve study said the road is at the end of its life doesn't necessarily mean that is the case. Also, the opposite can be true. Just because your reserve study says that your pavement has 2 or 3 years left, but there's potholes everywhere and wide open cracks, and maintenance is getting very, very expensive, you might want to consider doing that project sooner than later. So that's why engineers are here. If you need an evaluation, you can call up your favorite engineer and you can ask them to come out and take a look at the pavement and make a determination as to whether there is a useful life left. Oftentimes, when the reserve study is being done, that visual evaluation is taking place to determine what is the remaining useful life of that asphalt. So reserve study, very important as part of that asphalt pavement evaluation. So timing is important. We don't have control over the timing in many cases, but timing does drive the cost of material, or I should say the cost of material is driven by what happens over time. Same thing with labor costs. They change, they fluctuate over time. Also, your available reserve funds may change if you wait to do a project or you phase a project over several years. That's got a different financial impact on your reserve funds than perhaps doing a project all at once. So you need to take a look at your reserve funds. The current cost of materials, I will tell you that as everyone here today is probably acutely aware of, the cost of oil and oil-based products right now is a little high, and this will eventually affect the asphalt prices as we move through the season. So do your research. This is more really you don't really have control. You can certainly take a look at these charts. So if you were to go to, if you're in the state of New Jersey, if you go to the New Jersey Department of Transportation (NJDOT) website, you can find this particular fuel price index. This is not the cost of asphalt. I want to be very clear. This is an index that impacts the cost of asphalt. When you do an asphalt project and you're getting bids, and we'll talk about that later in the webinar, when you're collecting bids, we always ask for what the asphalt index is at the time that the bid is taking place, because that may change over time. So if by the time between the time you get the bids and the time you do the project, if the index has dropped significantly, you could expect to see a savings on the cost of material, not the overall project, but the cost of the material for your project. The opposite is true as well. If the bids come in and the price of asphalt rises sharply, you may expect to see a surcharge on your invoice. And there is a calculation that is done to show that how the index has changed and how that factors into the cost of the material. That's usually presented quite clearly in the invoice if there is a change. Another thing that's not mentioned in the webinar here, but also what's impacting bids right now is the cost of fuel. So the cost of diesel fuel, as you know, the equipment that's used to do these types of projects, these are pieces of equipment that run on diesel fuel. So when we put out the bids, we're now asking if there would be any fuel charge that would be considered when it comes time to invoice, and what that fuel surcharge would be based on. So that is a factor as well in an asphalt remediation project here in current 2026. So why might it be a good time for you to begin an asphalt remediation project? Again, we talked about the reserve fund. So community associations are required to reserve funds for the various components that need to be replaced, asphalt being one of them. Asphalt tends to be one of the more expensive components to remediate in a community, along with roof siding, but asphalt is one of the big ticket items typically. So uh, right now, all the specifications we prepared last year in 2025 are coming to fruition this year. The projects that are in progress right now are the ones that were prepared for beginning in 2025 last year, from summer through fall. Um, I will tell you that this is a very busy season. We're coming into the construction season right now. So if you are considering a upcoming asphalt remediation project, you are probably looking at a spring project at this point. But now it's not time to wait. It's time to move on that project if that's what you are planning to do. It takes time to put together specifications, to go out to bid. You need to line up your contractor. By the time that happens, we're starting to get at this time of year, once we go through that process, we're already getting into the fall. So you might want to, if you're considering something, a project for 2027, now is the time. So let's talk about the remediation process. So it is a process. The engineering approach to any engineering for any engineering firm, this is the basic step-by-step approach to remediating asphalt. So we'll talk about each of these steps here. I will tell you that oftentimes I get calls from associations that come in right in the middle of each of these 6 steps here. They have a handful of bids and they say, can you look at the bids and tell us which contractor we should pick? And most engineers will tell you that they cannot do that. The reason being is because when we are doing evaluation and preparing specifications, we are preparing one scope of work. We are evaluating, we're determining what needs to happen to repair and remediate that pavement, and that goes into our specifications. That single scope of work goes out to all bidders in the request for proposal from the contractors. When we are approached with a handful of bids, they're typically from with all different scopes of work, all different opinions on what needs to be done from different contractors. So there's really no way to do a reasonable comparison of a handful of bids that don't have a singular basis. So I want to make that clear to people. That's why we will typically tell you that no, we cannot do that. So what do we do? We start with an evaluation. So we're going to come to the site. If you were to call up your engineer and say, give us a proposal. We want to do a mill and pave project, this is where they would start. So first step, they come out to the site. I like to meet with a representative of the community, possibly somebody from the board, possibly property management, somebody who is familiar with the issues in the community and what the concerns are. And I do a walkthrough with that representative, and we talk about areas of specific concern. And the reason I do that is because even though I am looking for areas of deterioration and areas where there may be drainage problems, I can not always visually determine where there is a drainage problem. So for people who are familiar with the community and live in the community, now that's the time when you first begin the project to make your engineer aware of what your specific concerns are and not wait for them to find them, because it's not always visually apparent. So we're starting with a visual observation. We're looking at patterns of deterioration. We're looking at, as I mentioned, areas where the drainage might not be so hot. We're looking at areas too where traffic loads such as refuse trucks, where Amazon trucks come flying around the corner on a cul-de-sac and tend to tear up the pavement. We're looking at areas where there is wear and tear from traffic loads. There are some communities that have a main road through their community that carries truck traffic. Those roads take a beating and may need a stronger profile on that particular stretch of roadway. So part of our evaluation also is subsurface testing. So that could be that subsurface. There's all different types of subsurface testing, but the type of testing that is most valuable for preparing specifications is doing core tests. So let me talk about what core tests will tell me and what they won't tell me. So when an engineer is doing a core test, it's telling them they're gathering different cores from around the different areas of the community in the roadways, and they're looking for how the pavement is constructed. And you remember those pavement layers we talked about in the beginning. How thick is the surface course? How thick is the base course? How thick is the sub base, and what type of material is it made out of? So that's what we're looking for. The cores will not tell me why a pavement has failed specifically. It might show me that there's not enough pavement there, or it might show me that that there might be some deterioration. When we pull up that core, it may fall apart. Beyond that, the core cannot tell an engineer specifically why a pavement has failed. So keep in mind that when you're doing core testing, that your engineer is looking at the structure, that is looking at that pavement structure. One of the things I also look for when I do core testing is how many layers of pavement are there. In the past, some communities may have done an overlay without milling. I never recommend that, and we'll see why as we move through the following slides. So what am I looking for when I do a visual evaluation when I go out to the site? I'm looking for different types of deterioration. Now, this type of evaluation will give me a clue, perhaps, as to what is going on with the pavement. So if I see potholes like this when I go out, what happens is as pavement ages, the asphalt in particular, it becomes brittle and it shrinks and it gets stress cracks in it. It gets cracks along the seam lines where it was originally put in. And that's just how pavement ages. It's just the nature of asphalt pavement. But without maintenance, or sometimes even with maintenance, if you've got a bad winter, water will start getting into those cracks. And that is the worst enemy of asphalt pavement. So the water goes into the cracks, and during freezing temperatures, what happens to water when it freezes? It expands. So that water expands, it starts to deteriorate with great pressure the asphalt pavement around it, and pretty soon it starts to break off pieces of that surface course, and the deterioration goes deeper and deeper, and soon enough you've got a pothole. So we're looking for areas like this that might indicate that this area will most likely need a base repair. This is a pretty bad pothole right here. We're also looking for cracking patterns. Cracking patterns could tell us a lot about what's going on with the base course. So as I mentioned, asphalt, as it ages, it just becomes more brittle. It's just the nature of the material. It does crack. So seal coating as part of regular maintenance is important in getting a full useful life out of your asphalt pavement. So we're looking also to see this, here's an example here. This has been crack sealed, obviously, in the past more than once, but we're at a point now with this pavement where at the maintenance of crack seal or seal coat is no longer going to benefit this pavement, and it is time to do a repair, a major repair on the pavement. Another type of cracking that we are looking for is alligator cracking. So alligator cracking is just what it sounds like. It looks like a little alligator skin. And what that means is that the subgrade or subbase material underneath that has already been compromised. So usually when we see a severe alligator cracking in an area, we know that there is most likely some base repair that's going to be done in that, need to be done in that area. So alligator cracking can happen for a number of reasons. It could also happen because, as I mentioned before, you may have excessive vehicle loads coming through here. This area here may be an area where there are garbage trucks that come up to like a refuse pad and do sharp turns all the time. Just the weight of a loaded truck can cause subbase failure and then cause the surface to have this type of cracking. I want to point out here too, you'll notice here there is somebody did an overlay over top of the old asphalt that had the alligator cracks in it. You will notice that that overlay is gone wherever that alligator cracking is. It just was not able to support that thin overlay that was put over top of it. You could see the edges of the overlay beginning to crack here. Some other types of cracks we're looking to avoid are reflective cracks. So whenever we mill off the surface course of the pavement, we want to repair any cracks that are in that remaining base course, because if you pave over a crack without repairing it, that crack will eventually work its way up through your brand new pavement on the top, and you'll have that very same crack. And that's another reason why I'm not a fan of overlays without doing a proper repair, is because you end up with an extra very thin layer of asphalt there that doesn't last for very long. Any cracks you have underneath show up again in a very short period of time. We're also looking for seam cracking. As I mentioned before, seam cracks occur in a number of places, mostly where the paver, when the paver screed comes through and they're compacting pavement, they have to do it um, in sort of strips, if you will, because the machine is only so wide. So when they come through and they lay down the asphalt, wherever that the edge of that first pass is, they have to meet that again with the second pass and then compact that seam. And that's always a weak point. There's just no way around that. So they try to keep as many what they call hot seams as possible. So you want to lay down asphalt as much as you can on the same day so that your seams are hot seams, so that when they compact them, everything meshes together nicely and you get a nice tight seam. Cold seams, on the other hand, are between layers of asphalt that are laid on different days or at different times or different projects. And it's just what it sounds like. They're one side of that asphalt is already cool and they're laying down hot asphalt. They're trying to compact it as best they can, feather it in, do what they can. Cold seams do not perform as well as hot seams, and they tend to, as the pavement becomes more brittle, open up over time. And again, you want to make sure you're maintaining those and crack sealing those because they do happen. Settlement around catch basins. So oftentimes associations will tell me that they have drainage problems. And when I come to the site, I might see something that looks like this. Oftentimes it is a community where they are doing their first asphalt remediation. And what happens is when a community is newly constructed, everything on the site gets compacted, but underneath this inlet or any inlets or manholes on your site, they have to be manually compacted. And even though the contractor is getting as much compaction as they can out of that soil at the time it's constructed, depending upon the soil type, it may continue to consolidate over time. And what happens is around your structures, you may get this soil consolidation settlement around the structure. And it's usually, if that's the case, you usually see it all around the structure like this. And when it rains, you get a little puddle around the edges of the grate. It's just not making it into the grate because of that settlement. I will tell you, settlement can happen for other reasons as well. Oftentimes when the top course is milled off, there might be actually an open void alongside that the frame of that grate, because there may be a bad pipe connection, or maybe the mortar course around the top of the stormwater structure has disintegrated. Water's got in there. It sucked in some of that subbase material I talked about before, and it causes a void that is not apparent until you mill the surface course off. So that's something we're also looking for as part of a pavement project. I talked about the raveling overlay. Again, I won't belabor it, but I am not a fan of overlay. They don't last long. They're a Band-Aid. They're an expensive temporary fix to a much bigger problem.
What do you want, Peter?
So pavement cores, I talked about, here's an example here. I often have a lot of curiosity from homeowners as to how these pavement cores are actually done. So here are just some examples here. This is the rig. It's on the back of a pickup truck. Here is the core bit here. It's about 4 inches in diameter, and it's very noisy. And it goes fairly quickly though. And they punch down with this auger through the pavement layers and get down to the subbase layer. We'll dig out some of the subbase, and as you could see, here's in the center here, this is what the core looks like. It's pretty clean looking. And then the water is to keep the bit cool. That's what all that water is about. It's not shooting up out of the ground. That's cooling water for the auger. And then here on the right we have the contractor coring contractor measuring the thickness of the asphalt layers here. When one of the things I want to mention, when they're done doing these core samples, they do put cold patch in them. They do a good job of tamping it down so it's level with the roadway. You will be able to see where the core sample is, but you will most likely be planning a road remediation project in the near future anyway. So once we're done with our visual evaluation, any type of testing we think might be necessary, we are ready to do specifications. One of the points I did not touch on in the evaluation, areas of poor drainage. Sometimes there are different types of drainage problems. Some that can be solved in just the regular course of a mill and pave project, where the contractor might be able to pick up the elevation of the pavement along curb line. You might lose some curb reveal, or maybe able to manipulate some areas to cause the water to flow a little better. However, there are some cases where the drainage is just not functional for whatever reason. And there may need to be some further design. And that's why it's very important to meet with your engineer when they begin visual evaluation, because we need to see what type of drainage problems there are and try to determine what's causing them, so that any other type of pavement related remediation can be written into those specs, because that needs to be done. One of the things I want to caution you on, the basic pavement project is to mill off 2 inches of pavement and put back 2 inches of pavement. So if you have a very flat community with very minimal pitch, that can't be fixed with a pavement project. They can try to manipulate the surface of that pavement as the best they can to get that water to flow. But if you live on a flat site, they cannot turn that into a hilly site. So drainage is very important to discuss before the specs are prepared. So when we're preparing specifications, we're creating contract drawings. We're also creating a written project manual. We'll talk a little bit about that. So the technical specifications, which include, again, the contract drawing and project manual, describe the scope of work. You remember I talked in the beginning about that scope of work being uniform and going out to all contractors. That's why you prepare specifications, so that all the contractors are bidding on the very same scope of work. The specifications will reflect the new pavement design. Sometimes municipal requirements come into play. If you're doing any type of pavement expansion that is not part of a mill and pave, sometimes there are projects where there might be a little expansion involved. That's when the new design standards or municipal standards might come into play as well. One of the requests we often get are for speed humps. Where communities don't have speed humps, they want new speed humps to be put in as part of a pavement project. I strongly encourage any clients that want that to allow us to submit the specs to the township engineer in advance of going out to bid. The reason being is because speed humps can affect emergency vehicle response times. So you don't want to put in speed humps without with the township or fire official or EMS services knowledge, and then have to have them ripped out because of concerns for emergency vehicles. So very important that if you want to put in speed humps, that you, as a courtesy, submit them to the township engineer for any comment. Also included in the specifications are the asphalt mix requirements. So depending upon what state you're in, whether it's New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, there are state requirements for the type of asphalt that should be used on pavement projects. Typically, the asphalt coming out of the mills have conformance requirements to those standards. So when the project has reached its end, we'll often ask for the asphalt tickets What the asphalt ticket will show is what type of asphalt was in the load that the contractors were delivering to the site. It usually has the community name right on it so that you can see what was being delivered. I will tell you that asphalt of today is not the asphalt of 20, 30, 40 years ago. There's a lot of what's called RAP, R-A-P, recycled asphalt product that is in the asphalt. It is more brittle. It does not, I don't want to say it doesn't have the same useful life, but it requires a little more attention to maintenance than the older mixes. So, and it tends to be a little more brittle uh, and a little harder to work. So when the new asphalt goes in with the old Marshall mixes, you kind of had this nice kind of uh, uh, silky is not really, I guess, a way to describe asphalt, but to the eye, it had a smoother, softer looking surface than the newer mixes. The newer mixes look a little grainy. It doesn't mean that anything is necessarily wrong with them. It's just how the surface looks on these newer mixes. As long as there is not loose aggregate coming out of the pavement, it is typically in good shape. Again, you might want to have an engineer involved in contract administration, to take a look at the installed pavement when it's new, just to look to see if there are any punch list items that need attention. But generally, if the aggregate is not popping out of it is acceptable. Some other related um, components that are part of pavement remediation are typically any kind of replacement of damaged curbs or and drainage structure repairs in the roadway related catch basins are important. I know they're expensive and they are often part of extras to the project, but if you don't take care of them, it can affect the performance of your pavement. So when you're doing a pavement project, you want to have unit costs. And again, the engineer will do a visual observation. Do any of the curb pieces need to be changed out. There are certain NJDOT requirements for curb pieces and grates. The curb pieces need to have the smaller openings. They can't be the old arched openings that they used to have. And the grates need to be bicycle grates. The newer grates don't allow bicycle tires to get caught in them and cause injury. So especially in a residential community where there are, you want to not have to worry about liabilities. Putting in those new grates is an important part of a pavement project. So again, drainage structure repairs. So when the contractor comes in and actually does the project, they're going to remove that grate. They're going to look in the catch basin box. They're going to see, does it need mortar repairs? Does it need parge coat? Does the base of the inlet need to be repaired? They check the pipe connections. Sometimes those repairs are required before the pavement project can proceed. Also, sidewalk ramps, concrete sidewalk ramps where they come down. This is where you're walking down the sidewalk and where it comes down, that last sort of section or sections that come down to meet the pavement. Sometimes they need to be raised or lowered depending upon what, maybe because of a drainage issue, maybe the contractor recommends raising or lowering the pavement in a certain section. So those sidewalk ramps need to be changed out. Sometimes a community also, they have older sidewalk ramps and they want to put in the newer ADA ramps. I have some projects that as part of the pavement project, the community would like to replace the sidewalk ramps and put in something that's more ADA compliant with the detectable warning surfaces on them. So if that's something you want to do, it's good to let your engineer know that up front so you can incorporate that right into the specs and get actual base cost pricing for that. So different remediation techniques. We talked about milling and overlay. Again, the basic project is to mill off 2 inches of top course, put back 2 inches of top course, or whatever might be recommended. It's typically 2 inches. So when that top course is milled off, we look at the condition of the base. We see if any base repairs. We walk through with the contractor. We talk about what type of base repairs need to be done, if any. As I mentioned, sometimes you mill off the top course and the base course looks fantastic. And the last two projects I did, that's actually what happened. The top course looked absolutely horrible. I was sure we were going to have a lot of base repairs, and sure enough, they milled the top course off, and the base course was amazing. So sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, but you need to make any base repairs that are necessary before you put the top course back, or as I mentioned earlier, all those problems are going to reflect up through that top course. The other type of remediation technique is, of course, a complete reconstruction. So I have had projects where portions of the community may need full depth remediation. I'll give you an example. I had a community that was constructed in different phases by different contractors, and some of the courts in the last phase did not have as much pavement as the other as the rest of the community. And they were visibly, when we did our visual evaluation, we could see that the asphalt was just in terrible shape. And when we did the course, sure enough, there was not a lot of asphalt there. So they needed to not only remove the asphalt, they had to excavate down and reconstruct the pavement with a spec that matched the rest of the community, so that it was going to they were going to get a full useful life out of that. So sometimes pavement reconstruction is necessary. So the specs also include the project manual. So you have the contract drawings, which are the graphic representation of what needs to be done on the project. And then you have a project manual, which are the written specs, and they go together. And when you select your contractor and set up your contract with them, those specifications all become part of that contract. They become an attachment to it. So the project manual for that purpose includes general conditions and special conditions. What is the contractor responsible for? How are they responsible to keep the site? What are their responsibilities in terms of a warranty? I will tell you, our project manual currently has a 1-year warranty period in it. Some contractors are amenable to a longer warranty period. You simply need to ask. Some are not. So we have a 1 year in there when you are in the bid selection or in the contractor selection process. That is a good time to ask the contractors whether they would consider a longer warranty period, if that's something you would like them to consider. So also included in the project manual are the bid forms. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. I want to talk about the difference between base bid and unit pricing. Base bid includes the cost of all of the parts of the project you have to do. And again, I mentioned that the basic project is mill off 2 inches, put back 2 inches. So that's going to be part of the project. Also, there may be areas of curb. There may be new drainage that needs to go in. There may be speed humps that need to go in. So all those components of the project that are definitely going to need to be done, that goes into the base bid. That goes into the request for the cost for that base bid. Unit pricing, we also ask for in our bids. Unit pricing is for the items that may need to be done. And we don't know if they need to be done yet. A lot of times, until you open up those catch basins or mill off the top course, you can't get a good eyeball on what type of quantity is needed for that. So that's where unit pricing comes in. We have a list of unit price items that we include in our bid forms. And if occasion arises that you may or may not need them, you have the pricing for that. You don't need to quibble on pricing with a project in progress. You have the pricing for that. Also, with consistency with using specifications when projects go out to bid, not only is the scope uniform, but the quantities that all the contractors are bidding on are also uniform. So you're getting a reasonable comparison across the board. So we talked about the different types of additional work, sidewalk curbing. Some asphalt projects include driveways. I will tell you that if you are going to do a roadway project, you want to look at the condition of your roofs. You want to look at the condition of your driveways, if those are common elements that the association is responsible to take care of. Because you want to do your large components in order, because you don't want heavy equipment driving over your new roads. It can stress your roads and cause them to deteriorate more quickly. So if you roofing material is very, very heavy. So if you have a roofing project that needs to be done and you have an asphalt project that needs to be done, you want to get those roofs done first. Same thing with driveways. If you are going to do a roadway project, take a look at the driveways. Do the driveways need to be done first before, or maybe some of them do, maybe some of them don't. But you want to take care of any asphalt, any roofing projects before you do your main roadways. Same thing when a project is phased. You don't want to pick and choose areas of the community where you're going to have heavy equipment driving over brand new pavement to get to the next section they're doing. You want to essentially do a community from back to front. Of course, if you're doing a phased project, everyone wants to take care of the worst parts first. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it is not. Most often it's possible, but you want to try to back your way out of a community, or there might be multiple ways in, and there's different ways that it can be phased so that you can avoid doing that. Striping on pavement projects, we always specify that the striping be reinstalled in the manner that it currently exists. The reason that is because most times in communities, the number and placement of handicap accessible spaces are fixed by the approval, the resolution of approval for that particular community. So changing the number of, or I should say mostly reducing the number of handicap spaces or moving them around to different places. I know some places are tight on parking, and they want to restripe. If you want to do that, that's something you really want to plan for before the specs are done, so that you don't get halfway through a project and decide to restripe and find out that you can't be moving parking spaces around. So again, that's something you want to think about before you do the pavement project, and let your engineer know. It might be a case where you also may need to, as a courtesy, approach the township engineer and ask if there is anything that is required for the parking arrangements to be moved around. This is just a sample drawing of what might be in the specifications. You see the parking layout. It's specifying mill and pave. In this particular drawing, you could see in these areas, these hatched areas here, these are areas where there's likely potholes or open seams that are deteriorated, and where base course repairs are likely needed. Here's a sample of the detail sheet, just different treatments for different areas of the pavement. Where old pavement meets new pavement, you want to feather that in. You don't want a hard cold seam that goes all the way down through the structure of your pavement, because again, that's going to open up over time as the pavement shrinks. You're going to get water in there. It's going to start to deteriorate. So we have a detail that that feathers that pavement in so that the seam is staggered a bit, so you don't have that seam all the way down through the full depth. We also have details for, the typical mill and pave, but we also have details for full depth pavement. If there's anywhere where that type of repair would be needed, it shows how that pavement should be removed and reconstructed so that you get a nice, proper full depth reconstruction. Whoops. So when the bids are returned from the contractor, and I'm sorry, I don't have an example of our bid form from the project manual, but this might be what the bid summary would look like when it comes back. We create a spreadsheet with all of the base costs, or all of the base tasks in there, all the pricing from all the different contractors. And this one, you've got an example with 4 contractors. You could see all the different costs, so you can compare for each item across the board. For example, here we have mobilization as item 1, and you could see the difference in costs. Contractor A is 5,000, B is 9,000. Contractor C didn't provide a price, and contractor D has 1,700. And this is very typical. And for not for mobilization per se, but just the difference in cost between contractors. It's based on a number of factors. Your engineer has no control over how the bids are returned. And I often get questions on why are the prices so different? It's because the contractors each have a different size company, different size crews, different equipment, different access to materials. So there's all these factors that go into contractor pricing. Also, do they really want the job? Are they so busy that they're throwing a price out there because they know they're just busy and swamped, and if they can do the project for this price, they'll make it work. So there's different reasons why contractors give different pricing. So it's not always apparent to the engineer or to the board that's reviewing the bids. So we can go back when the bids are returned. Oftentimes we'll ask, we can go back and ask the contractor if it is their best pricing. I get that request a lot. I will tell you that oftentimes it is the contractor's best pricing. So that's some considerations for the bid summary. So when you're selecting a contractor, so there's always the low bid, there's always the very, very high bid, and there's always a grouping somewhere in the middle. So selecting on pricing isn't always your best option. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you've got a good group of contractors on your bid list, and you like all of them, and you feel comfortable selecting on price. Sometimes there are other considerations though. Schedule. I know with tennis courts have asphalt underneath there. They are an asphalt project. So oftentimes, it's December and the community wants a brand new tennis court by Memorial Day. And so schedule becomes a factor in selecting a contractor. Experience and references. So oftentimes the contractors on the bid list are there because either the engineer or the property manager or both have worked with that contractor before with positive results, and that's why they remain on your bid list. And oftentimes we will include contractors. I know there are times that there's a contractor I have not worked with or heard of, and we get a request to put them on the bid list because somebody else had a very good experience with them and they would like them to bid on that work. So, when you're putting together your bid list and selecting contractors, it's not a straightforward process. You're looking at different moving parts, costs and experience and pricing and schedule, and there's a lot of different aspects to selecting your contractor. So once a contractor is selected and you're ready to begin the work, you will, we have I won't go into it here because we have a whole different webinar on the topic of contract administration, but just to suffice to say that the three main players once the work begins is, of course, the association, who is the owner, the contractor, and your engineer if you have them involved in contract administration. So we always like to do a pre-construction meeting instead of having the contractor to show up one day with all their equipment. Pre-construction meeting is always important. You need to talk about different things about staging of equipment and different areas of concern. There may be residents who have issues with mobility, getting in and out, special needs. So these are all things that need to be discussed at the pre-construction meeting. So if you have an engineer involved in contract administration, you want them to be on site. They don't have to be on site all day, every day. That can be very, very expensive. But there are key times when the engineer should come out to the site. One is, of course, the pre-construction conference. The next key point is after the top course is milled off, so we can walk the base course with the contractor and have a look at that. to see what condition it's in. The next time they would come out is when the new top course is put back to have a look at how that went. And also at the end to do a final walkthrough with the owner, otherwise known as the association, and the contractor and the engineer. If there are any outstanding punch list items, you want to talk about how that's going to be resolved. And of course, payment authorization. So at the end of the project, the invoice is issued by the contractor, the engineer reviews it and compares it against A, the punch list of outstanding items, and B, the original contract to make sure that everything is in order, and then we'll authorize payment and eventually the release of retainer. So just looking just at some pictures of how these projects go. Here is the milling. I will tell you, any asphalt project is dusty, it's noisy, it's an inconvenience. It is short-lived though. So the milling is exceptionally noisy and it creates a lot of dust and interference and traffic interruption. However, the contractor is typically doing the best job they can to get it done as quickly as they can so that traffic can resume and they can finish the project. So this is what it looks like. This milling machine here tosses all the scrap into the back of the truck. You'll see multiple trucks come through and haul away the material. Material that is milled is not stored on site. I get that question a lot. Where are you going to store the millings? They're not. They're carted off site. They're taken to a facility that that recycles and reuses that for different purposes. We talked about excavation at inlets. Sometimes there is a bad pipe connection or the inlet needs to be repaired. A lot of inlets are precast, meaning that they are molded into one solid piece, if you will, a box of concrete. Older inlets are oftentimes built out of CMU, concrete masonry units. They tend to shift over time, especially in older communities, and that needs to be excavated out. The box needs to be rebuilt in some of those cases. The time to do that is usually before the pavement project begins or after the area is milled out. They'll make those repairs before the top course is put back. Sometimes base course reconstruction is necessary. This on the left side here is a parking bay. On the right side is the main roadway. This line here where the darker pavement is, that is most often a seam between asphalt passes, and it is often also a flow line for when it rains. The water flows along the base of those parking stalls. So you've got two things going on. You've got a natural seam there and you've got a flow line there. And we see a lot of deterioration in these areas in older pavements. So oftentimes this needs to be milled out and this needs a full depth reconstruction to give you that pavement structure, restore that again so that you can not have those cracks reflect up through your new pavement. Sometimes it doesn't need a full depth repair. For cracks that are open, sometimes you'll have cracks, but they're closed and they are not deteriorated. But sometimes when you mill out the base and there's a crack, it's open, and it needs to be spanned with something that's going to give it some tensile strength. In that case, the crack gets cleaned and they put down a crack repair fabric, and that gives it a strength so that when they put the new asphalt over it, you don't get that crack reflecting back up through the surface, small though it may be. Here's what basic asphalt installation looks like. Here's the screed that I talked about. You could see it has to go through in passes. It is not as wide as the roadway. All roadways, asphalt roadways that are wider than the screed will have seams in them. So in this case, you see them laying down the base course. You could see it's a little muddy here. It looks like a wet day, but this is your sub base here. They're putting down the base course over top of that. And then they'll have a roller come through and compact it. But this is, you can see where this gentleman is standing here, that this is all compacted. Where the screed is putting down material, you can see it's still fluffy behind the screed. It needs to be compacted. So top course installation, where the screed can't reach, that has to be handwork. So these areas where up in the corners of the parking bays, and also oftentimes around the inlets that needs a little bit of handwork to get that to lay down flat and be compacted properly. This slide's a little out of order, but I'm sorry, tack coat should be put down before the top coat of asphalt goes down. There are in the specifications, there is the rate of tack coat application that should go down, and that's usually laid down immediately before top course goes in. When the top course goes in, they will roll the asphalt. Sometimes you will see brown marks on the surface of the asphalt. And that those marks are temporary. They have to, these rollers have water that rolls onto them, picks up from the pavement, from the condensation on the pavement, and sometimes you get a little rust mark or dirt mark that does fade over time. And again, here's a completed roadway, nice and smooth. Completed roadway, you see that cold seam down the middle. It's nicely compacted though, it's not open. So you do see it, but it is compacted. Parking layout, we talked about striping earlier, and the importance of ongoing maintenance. So this pavement probably has reached the end of its useful life. They're really aggressive here with the crack seal, but you can see it's starting to block crack and alligator crack, and the maintenance becomes more expensive as the pavement ages, and long-term costs may be better if the project is done and the pavement is remediated. So types of maintenance or crack filling, of course, you want to update your reserve study, at which time those visual observations are done. Seal coating, there's crack repair, seal coating. Seal coating older pavement does absolutely nothing. It makes it look pretty, but it is not offering any UV protection. That damage has been done. It's not meant as a repair material. So seal coating is most effective on new pavement installed 2 years after that new top course is put on, and then reinstalled every 5 years thereafter. Of course, you have to restripe every time you seal coat because that will cover over your striping. Okay, I have reached the end of my presentation. Are there any questions? You can type them into the chat or turn off your mic, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending today, and have a great rest of your day. Stay cool.
Hi, sorry.
Oh, I hear you.
Yeah, I think a few of us already, charted some questions. I don't know if you had chance to look into them. We
They
put
just,
them in the
I'm sorry. I scrolled through earlier and I did not, okay, they just came up here. Let's see. Okay, just in the chat, if you are here for CEU credits, Jen is here, Jen LaGuardia, and she has given her email address, so you can email Jen. It's right in the chat there, jlaguardia@kipcon.com for CEU credits. Let's see. When we sign, here's a question. When we sign a contract, do we agree on the asphalt price the day of the contract signed, or the price fixed on the day of the project start date? Okay, so that's why we ask for that when we're getting our bids. That's when the price is quote unquote set for the contract. So that's why we're always asking for that asphalt index, so we can look comparatively when the project is done, and when you receive that invoice, we can compare the asphalt indices for the day of the bid against the day of the invoice. So to answer your question, you're agreeing on an asphalt price for your contract the day you select your contractor based on their pricing. That contractor has already given you a material cost for that asphalt to be installed. So that's what you're agreeing to. You're also agreeing to that with the understanding, if it's spelled out in the bid form, with the understanding that the material costs may be subject to change based on the asphalt index.
So
I don't know
can
if
I,
that
yeah,
helps you. Okay,
no, that helps me. Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
sure.
So, does it mean that the price could go up or down
It
depending on
does.
the index? Okay,
It does, and I've seen it do that. Now, if the asphalt, I mean, the asphalt index always changes, but if it doesn't change by much, contractors don't really bother with
right,
it.
right.
When there are acute changes, either up or down, that you will see either a credit back or a request or a change order for additional material cost.
Okay, got it. Yeah, because we are worried about a little bit of timing. Like, yeah, we signed the contract, but what if they're not able to get to it this year? Then we have to wait for next year. Then what
Right.
happens, right? So now this clarifies. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. I have another question here. Does the visual assessment reveal any potential base or subsurface concerns? And what criteria do we use to decide if subsurface repairs are necessary? So, right, so it's kind of a balance between the two. When we're doing a visual assessment, we're looking for evidence of particular types of conditions. So I mentioned the alligator cracking and the potholes. Typically, if you see that, you are you're not positive, but there's a strong indication that you may need some base repairs in that area. So when we see that, we assume the worst, that that particular area is going to require base repair. And that gets put in as part of the base bid. Remember, we talked about the difference between the base bid, the stuff you know you need to do, and the stuff that you may need to do, depending upon what happens as the project progresses. So once that surface course is milled off, two things can happen. And I mentioned before, sometimes I see the surface course and it looks like it's a mess. It looks like we're going to need base course repair everywhere. You get that milled off and the base course is solid. The opposite can happen as well. We may mark out areas for base repair, but when we get the surface milled off, we see that those areas might actually be larger. So there's no way to really pinpoint definitely where the base repairs would need to be done. We're using the visual tools that we have available to us to try to predetermine that, but it's not 100% accurate. I have a question. Is it possible to request a higher level of solvent to extend the life? I'm not sure what you mean by that, and that might be a good contractor question. Um, I would say if that's a question you have to ask your contractor. I have never heard of that being done. Usually what comes out of the mill is what comes out of the mill. You get what their mix is on that particular day, and the mill has to conform to NJDOT standards. There's no additive that I am aware of that will extend the life of the pavement, but contractors do this every day. That's the best person to ask as a contractor. I have another question. What is your opinion of ultra thin lift HMA as explained in the PPRA Association website? I am not familiar with that, but let's see. Our community is 20 years old, but we have a light traffic and have maintained our roads with regular crack sealing, no potholes, alligator cracks or raveling. Then it sounds like you have maintained very, very well, and that you are getting an extended useful life out of your pavement, which is very good. I know that I'm not sure what you mean by ultra thin lift HMA, but I know there is what they call a slurry coat that if your roads are older, but they are in relatively good shape, that they can apply that and it'll kind of buy you another extra few more years. It's not really a full depth asphalt course or anything like that, but it does have some protective qualities for older pavements. I have another question. What is the expected life of speed humps? Good question. And are they exposed to damage from snow plowing, etc.? Yes, they are. A seasonable movable speed hump better for winter removal. So there are pros and cons to the removable speed humps. So the asphalt speed humps, somebody has their mic on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's
Just
almost
put it
like
on
that.
mute if there's
Yeah.
anything.
No,
that you
no,
need
they
to-
are, it is like the people are asking questions. It's just the end.
Okay. Yeah,
So
so that was a little bit frustrating.
somebody's not muted. Can somebody
Hoping
mute
that has subsided. You haven't gotten any more.
Bacha Hassan? Bacha
Fabulous.
Hassan, your mic is on.
Or any other, anything else.
No,
Jen, can you mute
Jana
them?
emailed me.
You can mute them.
Actually,
You are the
doing
host. You can mute them.
And she said, Susan replied,
Got it. Thank you. All right, they're muted. Thank you. Okay, so the removable speed humps, there's pros and cons to them. When you have an asphalt speed hump, it has a smoother transition. It does slow people down, but it's not, there's no noise to it, and it is less jarring to the car. The removable speed humps have the advantage of, yes, you can remove them. And yes, plows do damage to speed humps. If they can catch the edge of it, with the plow. You have to remember that a plow is scraping pavement. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to scrape the snow off. So if there's any irregularities in that asphalt, the plow will most likely catch it. And speed humps do take a beating, especially if there's thermoplastic striping on them, or the edge where it meets the main roadway, they can often get chipped. The removable speed humps, they are they do make noise when you drive over them, and they are jarring to passengers. They really, really slow people down because of how jarring they are. But again, there's the noise. There is, somebody hits it too hard, doesn't see it, can do damage to their car. So there's kind of some trade-offs there.
Melissa, this is PM. You were asking about the PPRA.
Yes.
That is an association I stumbled on. I'm buildings and manager of, I'm manager of buildings and grounds for an association here. I'm a volunteer. They stand for the Pavement Resurfacing and Recycling Alliance, and they have an excellent toolbox that helps laymen like me
Oh,
look
I'm
at
going
all
to
the
check them
different
out.
things that you can do. So I encourage you to look it up. I found them to be very helpful.
Thank you
DPRA.
very much. I will definitely take a look at that.
Thank you. It's a good seminar, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Let's see. I have a question here. Do you do enough vetting for the contractors? What measures or parameters you consider when selecting the contractors? So, for me personally, or for Kipcon personally, I should say, as a company, we maintain lists of contractors that we use for various projects. Those contractors are selected on their quality of work, the responsiveness, a number of factors. They are oftentimes contractors we have done multiple projects with successfully. So, so in terms of vetting the contractors, although we ask for references from those contractors, they're more for the benefit of the owner than for us. We are very familiar with the projects that they do and what their quality of work is. So that's our vetting process, is that we have done multiple projects with them. I will tell you that sometimes, well, before we go to bid, we will give our bid list to the owner, so the board can review that. We allow them to remove any contractors they don't want on there. They can also add contractors, and as I mentioned before, there may be contractors that I have not worked with in the past, but I don't just go on the internet and find contractors in my area. If they come recommended from somebody, they will go on the bid list. But other than that, we maintain our own bid lists. I have another question. Given the length of time involved with the whole process, if the price increases greatly, is it possible to postpone or even cancel the project? Yeah, I mean, you certainly have that. You certainly have that option. I have many projects that are phased, and sometimes the cost of the first phase alone causes them to say, let's put the brakes on for a year so we can regroup and we can see what the next steps are. So yeah, you can certainly, I mean, when they mid-mill, you can't decide to not finish the project. You have to finish that phase of the project. You don't want to leave work undone. But yes, there are often times where you will reach a breaking point in a project where you need to say, we need to take a break on this and reevaluate what we're doing because this is costly or potentially costly. Let's see, will this presentation be mailed with CEU? Yes, contact Jen LaGuardia. Her email is here in the chat comments if you want to scroll through. A couple of questions to restate the email again. It is jlaguardia@kipcon.com, JLAGUARDIA @kipcon.com. Another question, is there a price lock on the asphalt if the project gets delayed by the contractor or community? Typically not. If you know, if you sign with a contractor and they do the project in short order, that price isn't really going to change. If you get bids from contractors and then wait a year to do the project, you're going to want to give the contractor the courtesy of revising their pricing. That pricing may no longer be valid. So oftentimes contractors will have right in their bid how long that bid is good for. But usually it's good for the season. So you get a bid in the spring, you're ready, you're ready to do the project by, September, that price really doesn't change. It's when you put projects off for more than one season that you're going to start to see price changes. What kind of oversight is needed by the engineering company during the project to ensure the contractor is doing as per the specs? So yeah, I had mentioned that you don't necessarily need your engineers standing out there all day, every day, because that is very expensive for an association to pay for. What we do and what is beneficial is to come out at key points in the project. I mentioned pre-construction meeting is very important. And also, the other key points are after the top course is milled to look at the base course, after the new top course is installed, and then a final walkthrough at the end to discuss any punch list items. So that's the bare minimum. That's what we recommend is the bare minimum. In phase projects, obviously, you're going to have more frequent site visits from your engineer, but those are generally the points that you want your engineer to have eyes on the project. I got another question. Is there a specific weather forecast you recommend for paving? I mean, do we need to do it only in summer or fall? Is spring still okay? Spring, in my opinion, is the best time. You're not up against the end of the season. The temperatures are nice for pavement to get the traffic back on the pavement. Summer and fall are absolutely fine as well. In the summer, though, when you get into the really hot weather, the asphalt tends to be a little more tacky, and you tend to see some tire scuffs. The tire scuffs go away; they lay back down, but that pavement takes a longer time to set up so that people can get back on it. Fall, again, nice weather, nice temperatures. The only problem with the fall is the later you go in the fall, the more your contractor is rushing because they are up against getting all their work done for the end of the season. So spring, in my opinion, is the best time. To get your specs in order now, get lined up for spring of 2027, and in my opinion, that's the best time. I got another question. Our community doesn't have any speed bumps. Is it possible to request new speed bumps? Yes, it is. Or is it a township request? So it's a little both. So typically with communities that want speed bumps and they got a problem with people racing up and down, especially when you get straightaways in your community, it's good to when your when your engineer is out there for visual evaluation, to talk to them about where you could potentially put some speed bumps. There are some some guidelines from Federal Highway Administration and AASHTO as to where those speed bumps are most effectively placed, where they're safely placed, and where they're most effective. So you want to have your engineer take a look at that during visual evaluation. Now, once you get the specs together showing where those speed humps are going to go, if they don't currently exist, if they're not replacing existing speed humps, you want to give your township engineer, excuse me, you want to give your township engineer the courtesy of commenting on it, because it does affect vehicle response times for emergency vehicles. So yes, you can put in new speed humps, but just make sure that the township is absolutely aware of what you plan to do and has had an opportunity to comment.
Do you coordinate that with the township, or is it our responsibility to do that?
Oh, well, either or. It's really a my apologies. It's really a it's a simple thing to do. You just simply email them and say, this is what we're planning to do.
Okay.
Is there anything we should be aware of? Any comments you have? And that's what I do. It takes just a minute to do.
Got it.
I don't know what their response will be and what other work may be involved, but it's a simple process to send it over to them.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Oh, I see your note, Patrick, about the trade association. Thank you for that information. I'm going to check them out. All right, and that looks like all the questions we have. If you sign off and think of something else, please feel free to email me, mrubel@kipcon.com, and I'm happy to chat with you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.